the Commission New Year. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you on board for another round. We will begin the meeting with a roll call since we are online. Mr. Kelly.
Okay, so I have in attendance right now the following commissioners: Bunker, Bradford, Cornwell, Palma, Berthofer, Bland, Gillis, Morgan, Wilson, Robertson, Conway, McCall, Burris, Rosa Hance, Roche, Puffer, and Etherton. And Gost is just hopping on. So I have 18. Are there any I missed?
All right. Sounds like we have a quorum. It being the first meeting of the year, I think I will also go ahead for the record and read our virtual meeting statement. Critical Area Commission is holding this meeting virtually using Google Meet and is streaming live to the public. The public can view the meeting from the Commission's website, where minutes of the meeting will also be provided. Commissioners may use the raise hand function to raise a question or comment. I will call your name in order. Please announce yourself when speaking so that any attendees on the phone can identify you. Attendees joining the meeting by phone should press *6 to unmute. Public was invited to submit written comments on any agenda item up to 24 hours prior to the meeting. Any comments received will be reported out by our excellent executive director. And with that, we will move to the approval of minutes. This is the December 17th, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have any comments or amendments on those minutes? All right, seeing and hearing none, I will ask if anyone would venture a motion.
So moved.
Commissioner Conway with the motion. We have a second. Thank you, Commissioner Palma. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. The minutes are carried, and that moves us to the project committee agenda. We have one item today. It is up for a vote. This is the Maryland Department of Transportation, specifically the Maryland Port Administration, on the James Island restoration. And Ms. Sweetan will take us through that one.
Can you see and hear me?
Perfect.
Yep.
All
You're
right.
good.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Jamila Sweetan. I am a planner with the Critical Area Commission. Today, I will be presenting on the proposed island ecosystem restoration project at James Island. We also are joined today by representatives with the project, so with Maryland Port Administration, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and Maryland Environmental Service. So just a little refresher and to back up a little bit. Many of the commissioners may recall a site visit to Poplar Island this past September. This site visit served as a hands-on experience to see island restoration processes firsthand. So some of the information that I'll present today may sound familiar to folks who didn't see the project committee presentation last week. At this site visit, commissioners and commission staff learned about the importance of island restoration within the Chesapeake Bay for the creation of remote terrestrial and aquatic habitat, including wetland restoration, promoting and enhancing conditions that support submerged aquatic vegetation and oyster recolonization, and also for the long-term management of dredge materials from the Port of Baltimore and the federal navigation channels. And just to provide some context, that there is, as far as dredge material management goes, there is 136 miles of dredge channels in this system. And so in a continuation of this effort, the Port and Army Corps are leading a series of dredge material placement projects. This is collectively known as the Mid-Bay Chesapeake, or the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Project, or Mid-Bay project, which utilized dredge material from these navigation channels for island restoration. And it's to restore 2 remote island habitats, Barren Island and James Island. And also, just for a refresher, or for those who weren't a part of the commission at that time, in 2022, the commission approved the first project located at Barren Island. This is approximately 1 mile west of Upper Hoopers Island in Dorchester County. So, to orient ourselves for James Island, it is located in the Chesapeake Bay, approximately 1 mile northwest of Taylor's Island in Dorchester County. Presently, James Island consists of 3 island remnants, and while these remnants were privately owned, the continued erosion has caused them to erode to the point where they are below mean high water and thus classified as state tidal wetlands. And this is an aerial image of those island remnants. So again, the present conditions consist of 3 island remnants. The project proposes to restore 2,072 acres of remote island habitat and provide approximately 50 acres of shoreline habitat, as well as providing the capacity to place approximately 95 million cubic yards of clean dredge material from these navigation channels. The restoration timeline will take place over roughly 40 years. And a little bit more on the details of this restoration. The island itself will be comprised of about 45% upland. This is this dark green on the slide on the right image. And then 55% wetland, which is these light greens down here on the lower portion of the island. And of those wetland habitat, 50% will be high marsh and 50% will be low marsh, and they're denoted by those different shades of light green. Additionally, the various shades of pink, oranges, and browns are the different habitat and wetland features. And it's also to note that this figure was included as an attachment for the staff report, which breaks it down and has like a more clear legend. And the project includes the installation of on-site facilities within one of the wetland cells, as well as roadways to operate and maintain the project over the course of the restoration project process. And then additionally, the project team is evaluating the means for engineering with nature to modify the proposed stone perimeter dike along the eastern shore of the wetlands. And these modifications include potentially include combinations of tombolo, living shorelines, and rock sill, and offshore submerged living breakwaters and reefs. So while the main project priority is dredge material placement, the overall purpose is also for helping the island and surrounding habitats be more resilient. As a part of the larger Mid-Bay project, James Island project will restore eroding remote island habitat and protect it and its adjacent aquatic resources by integrating resilient practices, while all providing beneficial use for maintenance dredge material. The image here is the historic shoreline of James Island. The gray line, which can be a little bit hard to see, represents what the shoreline looked in the 1800s. The pink line is the shoreline in the 1940s. The green is the shoreline in the 1990s. And then when we get to this orange fill, that is the shoreline in 2004. And then very faintly right here, this red fill is the present conditions. This is all superimposed upon the proposed island footprint, which is in this bluish gray. Hydrologic, hydraulic, and storm modeling tools were used to account for climate resilience in this project design. The James Island restoration includes a perimeter dike of plus 11 feet around wetlands and plus 20 feet around the uplands once the restoration is complete. The height of the perimeter dikes and armor stone were selected based on these tools and models, and the models incorporate considerations for both sea level rise projections for the end of the century and coastal storm surge to ensure maximum resilience. So the permits and review by other agencies can be found on pages 3 and 4 of the staff report, but overview of it is that MDE issued the water quality certification on December 23rd, 2025. The Board of Public Works issued the tidal wetlands license on December 22nd, 2025. And then in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, the U.S. Army Corps finalized the Chief's report and the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Restoration Integrated Feasibility Report and Environmental Impact Statement for the entirety of the Mid-Bay project in 2009. Since significant time has passed since this original EIS and those original pre-construction engineering and site designs, the Army Corps conducted a supplemental EIS, or environmental impact statement, for James Island in 2024. There is no additional authorizations required from the Army Corps for this project. The time of year restrictions for the various natural resources have been identified and addressed in coordination with the Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries. And so coordination with DNR will continue through the design and restoration of the James Island process. And to note, the time of year restrictions can also be found in the attachment to the staff report. Due to the identification of buried paleo channels that may have the potential to contain archaeological resources within the access channel and turning basin, there has been the establishment of a programmatic agreement between the Maryland Historic Trust and the Army Corps to conduct monitoring during dredging of these areas. And so continued coordination with MHT will be required. And then finally, in accordance with MDE regulations, a public notice was published in the Star Democrat and the Maryland Register and on MDE's website. This public notice period was held from July 15th, 2025 through August 15th, 2025. In addition, notices were provided to adjacent property owners, port stakeholders, elected officials, and interested community members involved with the project. And no public hearings were requested during this period, and MDE conveyed 3 letters that were received, and they all had generally positive feedback. And so just a quick highlight of what was discussed during last week's project committee meeting. We had questions regarding why the original island footprint was not selected. The Army Corps and the Port and Maryland Environmental Services responded saying that extensive analysis for the proposed footprint was conducted. This included looking into restoring the original footprint. They decided on the current proposed footprint due to multiple considerations. These considerations include less of negative habitat impact for the overall Mid-Bay project. So they are looking at both Barron and James Island. And originally Barron Island was going to be the larger of the two, but they had to consider the impacts to submerged aquatic vegetation beds adjacent to that island. And then additionally, they're looking at placements that would allow for the needed capacity for dredge material. And so while the configuration is slightly different, the sum of the 2 footprints, James Island and Barron Island, in the Mid-Bay project is equivalent to the original island footprints. Additionally, we had inquiries about the engineering with nature process and understanding what sort of nature-based solutions will be implemented along the perimeter dikes. And so the Port and the Army Corps and MES responded that providing a completely soft shoreline would not enable them to place the dredge material and contain it, which is one of the goals of the Mid-Bay project. And so they are currently investigating how to soften that eastern perimeter dike and also allow maybe a lower structure that can provide more habitat conductivity. This is all in conjunction with some of these offshore nature-based solutions that they're also planning on implementing, including reefs for oysters and fish habitat. And so this is an ongoing discussion that they are having about how to approach greening that perimeter dike. And with that, the recommendation from the project committee is approval. And I will turn it over for questions.
Thanks, Jamili. Questions for Jamili on this one? Project Chair Conway.
Thank you, Chair Fisher. Just a quick note. I wasn't here for that presentation. I noted you have here approval in the agenda. It says approval with conditions.
Yes.
Making sure that I get the the recommendation right here when I do. Yeah.
So there was a condition on the project committee, which was that the port needed to provide us with a copy of the Board of Public Works Tidal Wetland License. They did provide us that in the week between the project committee meeting and this meeting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, just a quick comment. There's a couple colonial nesting bird sites on James Island, if I recall correctly. My comment is just that these kind of restorations, when they help colonial nesting birds in particular, are really badly needed. And there's a lot of, I think moving forward, there's a lot of ways to streamline this for folks who want to do it, especially in the coastal bays where I oversaw a number of those. And the permitting is just the biggest issue, and it shouldn't be. So, kudos to everybody for this project, getting it done to the finish line.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Any other questions? Okay. I have one. Just curious about phasing. I know the staff report mentioned that all of this is, of course, dependent on funding. And I know the state has an excellent track record and places a high priority on this kind of stuff, both for our economy and our environment. But if there were to be a break in the execution of the project, is it set up in a way that is sustainable in terms of the work that's done? Is there an easy way to sort of take a pause without potential risk to the project itself or the environmental conditions down there? I know there's someone from the project team maybe who could answer that.
Yeah, that's a great question. This is Amanda from the Maryland Port Administration. I'm not sure, Alex, if you think you can answer that. I know that each contract is going to be issued as its sole project. But Alex, can you help with that?
Absolutely, Miss Amanda. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Boldowski. I'm a civil engineer with the Army Corps of Engineers here in Baltimore District. And to overall answer your question, yes, the project is certainly funding dependent, right? If we receive a small amount of funds, then we can only execute a small project. And that may not be as efficient as when you can execute larger projects. And it's probably going to take 10 to 15 years of construction work to actually build out the skeletal structure of the entire 2,072 acres and all the cross dikes and other ways that we're going to build structures to contain the actual dredge material. And as I'm sure some of you are aware, this is a cost share between the federal government and the state of Maryland, between the Army Corps and MPA. And we're set up to cost share this project for the life of it. And every step of the way that we receive funding, the engineering staff here, we have to absolutely consider what is a clean break in a project. We don't want to commit to doing something only halfway. We have to be able to like the first contract, for example, that's going to come out to be awarded is going to be the first containment cell, just one cell, because that's the money that we have to work with. And then the next project, we're going to look to build a couple more containment cells, because that's how much money we think we're going to get. However, if funding were to be paused at a certain point in time, then we would have to take a pause on that actual dike construction. But that doesn't mean we couldn't work on other projects, like more facilities, like the structures, like personnel piers, things like that. If a large chunk of money comes in, then we can build a lot more of the project. But to try to answer it a little more succinctly, that whenever we receive funding and we have an idea of how much we're going to get, we are trying to consider how do we make a project that is going to be sustainable in its condition for that amount of time until more of the project is built out. And sometimes that means putting in like temporary armor stone in order to reduce overtopping and wave action against the sand constructed dikes so they don't unravel themselves, in the meantime, while we're waiting another year or two or three for funding to come in. And just to kind of cap it off, these projects are going to take years to construct in their own right. So a lot of time can pass. And having temporary features built in between is going to help us bridge that gap between the projects. Over.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions on the project before we turn to the committee? All right, seeing and hearing none, Project Chair Conway, I will turn to you for a committee report.
Thank you, Chair Fisher. So as stated earlier, the committee heard this and recommended approval with conditions. Those conditions have already been met between meetings, and therefore I move that we approve the submission.
Thank you, Commissioner Conway. There is a motion on the table. Do we have a second for that motion?
Wilson will second.
Commissioner Wilson with the second, moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item before we vote? Very well. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Motion carries. Project is approved. I want to thank the Corps and the state and all the project partners for their time and energy working through this with the commission.
Thank you.
That concludes the project committee agenda for today. We move to the program committee agenda. We have 3 items on the agenda. The first 2 are eligible for consent. We will take them one at a time just to keep things clean and orderly. Both involve Pocomoke City. The first is the critical area program comprehensive review. And because the committee action was consistent with the original staff recommendation, it is listed for consent. Is there any commissioner who wishes to pull the item off of consent and receive a full report? Very well. With that, I will turn to Program Chair Bunker for the committee's report on this item.
This is the Pocomoke City Comprehensive Review.
Yes.
At the program committee meeting on January 14th, 2026, the program committee voted to concur with the chair's determination that this comprehensive review be processed as a refinement to the Pocomoke City Critical Area Program, as the proposed changes are consistent with the critical area law and its regulations. Further, the committee recommended the chair approve this comprehensive review with the conditions as outlined in the staff report.
Very good. Thank you, Steve.
Mhm.
Any comments from commissioners on this one? Seeing none, I will acknowledge the recommendation and the concurrence from the committee, and it will stand as my final decision in this matter. Moves us to the second item, also Pocomoke City, also related, critical area mapping update. This was also advanced by the committee, consistent with the staff recommendation, is therefore eligible for consent. Does any commissioner wish to remove it from consent and receive a full presentation? Seeing none, Steve, back to you.
Okay. So this is the Pocomoke City map update.
That's correct.
Yes. At the program committee meeting on January 14th, 2026, the program committee voted to concur with the chair's determination that this map update be processed as a refinement to the Pocomoke City Critical Areas Program, as the proposed changes are consistent with the critical area law and its regulations. Further, the committee recommended the chair approve this map update as proposed.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from commissioners on this item? Once again, seeing none, I will acknowledge the concurrence and recommendation from the committee, and it will stand as my final decision. Third item on the program committee agenda, it comes from Anne Arundel County. This is a program text amendment related to habitat enhancement plans. Jamila, you are all over this meeting today.
Yes, me again. Hi, everyone.
Everything looks good.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yes. As you know, I'm Jamila Swaden, Natural Resources Planner with the Commission. And today I will be presenting on an Anne Arundel County Bill 6725, which focuses on clarifying existing and establishing new vegetative management processes for the county. I'm also joined today by folks from the county who are going to help present a couple slides and help with any questions following the presentation. So Anne Arundel County has submitted a text amendment to their critical area program pursuant to Natural Resources Article 8, 1809 for approval by the commission, and a copy of the bill as enacted by the county council was included as an attachment to the staff report and is summarized in the staff report. The bill amends Article 16 of Anne Arundel County's code to establish new local processes and clarify existing local processes for pruning and clearing, including in areas like the critical area buffer and on steep slopes in the critical area. And then as a note, this proposed text amendment was also presented for information only in May 2025. And so feedback from that committee meeting was integrated into the amendment we're seeing today. So the proposal constitutes a change to the county's critical area program and thus must be reviewed and approved by the commission in order to take effect. You'll see in the staff report and in this presentation that the program committee is recommending that the commission concur with the chair's determination to process this text amendment as a refinement to the county's critical area program, and that the program committee recommends approval with conditions. As a note, the staff report at the top says just approval. Following the committee meeting, there was 2 conditions that were added for approval, and those will be elaborated on at the end. So the bill adds 3 definitions to Article 16 of their code. The first is clearing, the second is pruning, and the third is woody vegetation. And then as a note that following the program committee meeting, the county tied the definitions of clearing and pruning to the American National Standards Institute A300 standards. So to break this bill down and explain the various permitting processes that exist in the county, currently there are 3 permitting processes that applicants can pursue for development and or vegetation management. There's a standard grading permit. This is for proposed development that is beneath 5,000 square feet. And then the grading permit that is for development above that threshold. And then additionally, there's applicants can also apply for a permit for just vegetative management needs for, so a vegetative management plan, which is for projects that are underneath 5,000 square feet. And so this bill addresses a common barrier though. What permit should applicants apply for if they want to just manage vegetation but exceed that 5,000 square foot limit? As the permit process currently stands, they would need to apply for a grading permit, which can be expensive or cumbersome for applicants. And so with that, the county is proposing in the amendment the establishment of the Habitat Enhancement Plan, which is for vegetative management needs up to 1 acre. And to expand on this, Habitat Enhancement Plan, or HEP, this is a permitting process that is intended for managing existing forest or other natural areas to enhance the habitat and ecological balance. A draft of the permit and guidelines were included as an attachment. And this outlines the types of activities that may be approved under this process and includes pruning for health and safety of vegetation, non-commercial timber stand improvements, and the eradication of non-native invasive vegetation and planting of native species. And just to note, this plan is intended to create a new process outside of the grading permit to allow for property owners and nonprofit organizations and such to conduct activities that pertain to vegetative management needs. Neither the vegetative management plan nor the habitat enhancement plan are intended to be for any development activities or in preparation for development activities. Those would fall under the standard grading plan and the grading permit. So though this bill is creating a more, through this bill, the county is creating a more streamlined process for larger restoration type activities including the creation of the HEP or Habitat Enhancement Plan, which may be used in lieu of a grading permit. Explicitly, the bill amends the Anne Arundel County Code Article 16 to clarify that, amends Article 16 to clarify that these existing and newly established permitting processes include clarifying that the vegetative management plan may be authorized for pruning or clearing of shrubs, woody vegetation, or trees in areas less than 5,000 square feet. It establishes the habitat enhancement plan, which may authorize up to 1 acre of clearing or pruning for managing existing forests or natural areas. It codifies that the vegetative management plan and habitat enhancement plans may be used in lieu of grading permits, provided that they meet the following criteria: that earth disturbance or root extraction is only allowed with county approval. Standard sediment and erosion control plans approved by the Soil Conservation District are required for plans greater than 5,000 square feet. And mitigation is required at a 1-to-1 rate for trees and shrubs to be replaced with trees and shrubs as approved in the plan, and that no mitigation for pruning is required. Again, it's important to note that underneath the authorization of these two plans, the clearing of vegetation for activities related to development in preparation for development application are not allowed. And disturbance resulting from clearing or pruning for development applications will be mitigated at appropriate rates as outlined in COMAR and the county's code. This will include higher mitigation rates if required for impacts to things like habitat protection areas, including FIDs, if it's associated with development activities. So to highlight when the habitat enhancement plan and vegetative management plans are applicable, the table breaks down explicitly when pruning and clearing would require approvals through these two plans. Specifically, the bill purposely calls out when approvals are required and at which thresholds they are required at, especially within environmentally sensitive locations, such as within the critical area buffer and on steep slopes. Additionally, the bill prohibits applicants from performing piecemeal clearing and grading that would cumulatively exceed these allowable thresholds. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne Arundel to present some examples of when these plans would be applicable.
Thank you, Gemily. This is Nathan Markline, Code Enforcement Administrator with Anne Arundel County. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay. With these habitat enhancement plans, one of the things, Gemily's already kind of iterated this a few times. The types of projects that we will review under the proposed habitat enhancement plan would be for habitat enhancement / restoration type projects. So think of invasive species management, sites where maybe you're proposing to get rid of existing impervious surface, convert that to natural habitat with native tree and shrub plantings, but specifically on projects that are greater than 5,000 square feet, which is very common for invasive species eradication projects. It's very if you have a larger property with a lot of forest edge, you are likely to have more than just 5,000 square feet of invasive vines, shrubs, trees growing in those areas. So our intent with the habitat enhancement plan is that our IMP forestry staff will be directly working with the applicants before, during, and after these project proposals come in. So if a nonprofit, HOA, or property owner is looking to do one of these projects, we're going to be looking for them to get in touch with us. We want to be able to come out to the site, look at the proposed project before they even submit any paperwork on it to see if it is the type of project that we want to review under a habitat enhancement plan. And if there's any inclination that it is development related or pre-development related, we're going to be steering them to the appropriate grading permit or standard grading plan. And then as those applications come in, we're reviewing the scope of work being proposed. If we need more detail to make sure that this restoration plan is solid and includes the necessary long-term maintenance to guarantee success with these restoration activities, it'll be a constant flow of feedback back and forth between us and the applicants to make sure that any enhancement projects that are being approved are set up for success. And one of the really cool things about this idea with the Habitat Enhancement Plan is the applications can come from the nonprofit partners that are designing these kind of restoration activities on the day-to-day. They're coming from our natural resources professionals, many of which do not have an engineering seal, so they cannot create their own sealed stamp plans for a full-blown grading permit. But they are the resource professionals that are kind of best in tune with the site, best in tune with the proposed management to put forth these projects. And then our forestry staff are some of the best at the county to be working with these applicants and looking at these projects on the site. And we'd be reviewing the site during and post, doing any inspections on any restoration plantings that go in afterwards. So it's really going to be natural resource professionals working with natural resource professionals and staying, engaged with these projects start to finish. Next slide, please. Here's an example of one project that came through the county in the last few years that it really would have benefited from having a habitat enhancement plan. So this community, Village of Middle Cove, they had a old tennis court that was built in the 1970s. It had been defunct since the 90s. The community wasn't using it. The community actually wanted to get rid of the impervious surface and convert this to natural forest. However, the impervious area was roughly 11,000 square feet. So by county code, they needed to get a grading permit. It was Arundel Rivers was working with them to put this together. They did all the drawings, had everything ready to go. And this was a grant funded project. So it was kind of a cooperation between some stormwater management funding as well as our reforestation funding to remove the hardscape and then install the trees. However, because they needed a grading permit and they needed to have the site surveyed and they needed an engineer's seal on the drawings that they had already prepared, like that alone cost them roughly $6,000, which would really be on the low end. If you had to hire an engineering firm to make all the drawings for a grading permit, your costs are only going to go up from there. So you can go to the next slide. This kind of shows what the site looked in the end. So this project, it did not redevelop it, did not turn it into another hardscape area. It was simply conversion from old tennis courts to forest. And unfortunately, because we had a required grading permit, they had to spend an additional probably 6 months in permitting lag and $6,000 just to get that stamp. So really, we're trying to make sure that the limited funding we have for these restoration projects and these reforestation projects, invasive management projects, is going to the best possible usage, which is typically the management activities, the tree plantings, not engineering stamps and surveys. Next slide, please. This is another community it's near Cape St. Clair that we've been working with, Deep Creek Village. This is a community. They have roughly 20 acres of existing forest conservation easement. That community has been doing on-scene, small-time efforts to do invasive eradication over the years on their own dime. But they've got roughly 8 acres of infested area, 8 acres roughly of forest edge that's full of invasive species. And they're looking to do kind of a holistic restoration of go in, eradicate the invasives, preserving as many of the natives as they possibly can, and then doing follow-up reforestation plantings to really maintain that existing tree canopy and cover and rebuild that forest understory layer while doing future maintenance to keep those invasives from progressing, because we really don't want those invasives to progress from the edge into the forest interior and to continue to decline the overall health and biodiversity of that forest. But because it's roughly 8 acres, if we were to do this under 5,000 square foot vegetation management plan phases, we're going to have to open and close phases I think it'd be roughly like 70 vegetation management plans it would take to implement this one restoration project. Again, there's really not a need for a engineered grading permit because we're not doing significant grade work. We're not doing any development projects. It's simply just invasive clearing, targeted herbicide application, and then restoration plantings. You can go to the next slide, please. So in this slide, just kind of shows some of the current site conditions on the right, some of the site conditions on the left where some of the invasive eradication has occurred. So I just kind of wanted to show that to demonstrate that, just because it's invasive management doesn't mean that the whole forest is being cleared. We're trying to do targeted eradication on the invasives, preserving as much of the intact native canopy and native natural regeneration understory as possible. And then we're going to do supplemental reforestation plantings to really bolster the health and future of that stand.
Thank you, Nathan.
You're welcome.
So just to take a step back and kind of provide a brief overview of the program committee discussion, the following things the program committee were interested in. One was coordinating with the Department of Natural Resources Forest Service as it pertains to how this bill is aligned with the Forest Conservation Act. And so this was actually a condition that was added to approval, and you'll see that on the next slide. Additionally, we had a few questions behind intent and purpose and implementation. One such question focused on the differences between the Habitat Enhancement Plan and the Vegetation Management Plan when it comes to the language in the bill itself, in regard to like enhancing ecological balance as called out in the Habitat Enhancement Plan. It was noted by the county that the Vegetation Management Plan was prior established process, so it's been established by the county and it deals with a limited amount of clearing and pruning, usually under that 5,000 square feet limit. That's typically within areas that would not meet a definition of a forest. And so that those larger scale projects that fall under the HEP and have the ability to impact forest tracts, the bill specifies that the work should be done to enhance the ecological balance of that system. And then we also had inquiries around clearing for things like views to the water. And this is where county review comes into play. Clearing for things like views without underlying reasons that would benefit the habitat and site is not something that would typically be approved by the county under a vegetative management plan or a habitat enhancement plan. And then they also asked the county to clarify required mitigation. So there was that 1-to-1 mitigation rate. The county commented that the intent is to approach the plantings on site by a case-by-case basis, and that the VMP and the HEP are intended for maintenance and enhancement of habitat for things like invasive removals, and that if there's things like canopy removed for, say, like tree of heaven, or if understories removed to do invasive removal, those would be planted back with native species. And so, again, the proposal constitutes a change to the county's critical area program and thus must be reviewed and approved by the commission in order to take effect. You'll see in your staff report and this presentation that the commission, the program committee is recommending that the commission concur with the chair's determination to process this text amendment as a refinement to the county's critical area program, and that it is recommended for approval with conditions. These conditions include that prior to January 2021's meeting, so today, the county shall contact the Department of Natural Resources Forest Service on the proposed bill to ensure its compliance with the Forest Conservation Act. I want to note that the county has emailed and contacted the Department of Natural Resources Forest Service to have a discussion around the bill and for their review. Additionally, this has been conditioned upon that when the county receives confirmation that the proposed bill is in compliance with the Forest Conservation Act, the county shall forward the confirmation to commission staff. So I will turn it back over to Chair Fisher.
Thank you, Jamili. And thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate all the time and effort that the county has spent on this item. There's been a lot of work on this in committee. Any questions from commissioners on this item at this point. All right, I've got a little 1 next to Steve and a 2 next to Tammy. So Commissioner Bunker.
Yeah, just to follow up, I think that condition number 1 has already been met. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Before I make my motion, I just want to confirm that.
I guess the question would be, would that still be necessary for the commission to approve? Considering it's been met.
Correct.
Emily?
No, definitely not. You don't need that condition. And then just a reminder that this is a refinement, so it would simply just be a report out from Steve as to what the committee did.
Thank you. Commissioner Robertson.
Thank you. Can Nathan, maybe you can clarify. So does a habitat enhancement plan, does it exempt a project from needing an erosion and sediment control plan? I just asked because the aerial imagery from the village of Middle Cove project shows, some earth disturbance and just wanting to have an understanding of how the sediment erosion control plan kind of fits into this for
Sure.
disturbances where you have earth disturbance similar to what was shown with the village of Middle Cove.
Absolutely. So the habitat enhancement plan was actually, we worked with Soil Conservation District and have an approved standard sediment erosion control plan that would go along with that. And that should have been included in the documents that we share with Gemily. So it's very similar to the other standard plan that we use for the standard grading plan, but the acreage or the square footage had been increased up to 1 acre. So if the proposed grading activities did not fit within those standards for that standard plan, then the project would be recommended for a grading permit.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hans. I think you're muted, Rosa. We hear something, but we're not hearing your voice.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this presentation. This has been very informative. I'm muted. Hold on.
Nope, you're good.
Let's see.
You got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's odd. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a considerable lag, at least on my
I will
screen.
type it. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay. Nick, how are things for you?
And now it works. That's hilarious. Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. This has been really informative. Nathan, you mentioned the oh dear. Yeah.
Rosa, we can hear you, but I think there's a significant delay, at least for some of us. So I would say go ahead
I
and
will
ask.
turn off my video. Is that improved?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've lost me.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah.
I was wondering if you could describe the remedy to the issue that you flagged where because of the site.
Okay. Hopefully the question in the chat is clear to the county.
Yeah, so I'll read it real quick. It sounds like Commissioner Hans' question is, can you describe the remedy for the 5,000 square foot issue that you flagged?
Is that in relation to like the Deep Creek Village forest example? Okay, so yeah, so what we would hope would be that the habitat enhancement plan, because it can review a larger project area at one time, up to 1 acre, would allow us to approve this type of restoration work in a larger phase that becomes much more cost effective and efficient for the contractors that are doing the professional restoration activities. So rather than having to have a landscape crew come in and attack a very small area, and then we need to have it reviewed by an inspector and approve the next phase, and then they come back for another 1 hour's worth of work, we can kind of mobilize them to come in. They'll carefully manage the larger 1 acre block of area, and then we're kind of inspecting that as they go through, and then we can release them on the next phase. So we're trying to reduce the mobilization costs, reduce the time that it takes to do the project, just to make the fund usage and the projects more effective and efficient.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. Any other questions? Okay. Program Chair Bunker, we'll turn to you.
All right. At the program committee meeting on January 14th, 2026, the program committee voted to concur with the chair's determination that this text amendment be processed as a refinement to the Anne Arundel County Critical Area Program, as the proposed changes are consistent with the Critical Area Law and its regulations. Further, the committee recommended the chair approve the text amendment with the conditions as outlined.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from commissioners at this point? Seeing none, I will acknowledge the committee's concurrence and their recommendation, and it will stand as my final decision in this matter. Again, I want to thank the county and our own team for all your work on this. We're looking forward to seeing some great projects come out of it at the other end. That concludes the program committee
Thank you.
agenda. We will turn to a fairly brief update on our climate resiliency and equity regulations. Our work group is still working, so we will have a more complete presentation at a future date. But we wanted to keep everybody up to speed as to how things are progressing. So with that, Ms. Herger and Ms. Durant.
Kate, you're still on mute.
Technology is great when it works. How about we let's bump to any legal updates from Emily, and then we'll circle back to the work group. Ms. Vanieri.
Hi,
Oh, there they
everyone.
are. See, that always works, right?
Okay, bye.
Sorry, Emily. Okay.
Very good. All right, Lisa and Kate, take it away.
Oh, I see the problem. Hold on one second.
Nope, we lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'll figure it out. I just wanted to say thank you to all the commission members who've stuck with us through our 7 work group meetings. We had our most recent one last Thursday, and it was very successful. We presented some initial draft language to the work group that was equity focused, and we got a lot of great feedback, which I will get into
in 1 second, but I wanted to just remind all the commissioners that as we're working on these regulations, we are focused on climate resiliency and equity, which we are required to do per the legislation that was passed in 2024. And so Lisa and I are currently working on drafting our climate resiliency regulations. So that language will be forthcoming. And we are hoping with that to address sea level rise, storm surge, wetland migration, precipitation-induced flooding, other extreme weather events. But what we've been, and we've talked to the work groups about that, what we've been focusing on drafting wise right now has been equity related, where the new legislation, which is now in our statute, requires us to address the fair distribution of burdens and benefits, environmental burdens and benefits, also making sure that we have representative participation in the review process. So we're looking at some of our public participation guidance and regulations. And then the law was really big on providing and increasing public access to water and natural habitats. So those are the overarching requirements that are within the law. When we met with our work group last Thursday, we talked a little bit about the applicability of these new climate resiliency and equity regulations, and how at this point we are hoping to have a smaller subset of project types that they would apply to, but those would all be projects that the commission sees and votes on for approval. We also wanted the equity regulations and the forthcoming climate resiliency regulations to set up the process for the jurisdictions to walk through. We will be providing some of that information through guidance because some of it is very specialized and too specialized for regulation language. We did have some really great discussions about mitigation in regards to equity and ensuring that the mitigation meets the affected community's needs and wants, and how do we incorporate that information, which also led to some very robust conversations about public participation and community meetings as part of public participation. We want to ensure that any communities that are affected by projects are being heard. And so we want to encourage the local jurisdictions to have meetings and listen to their constituents. And then also, if they do receive comments, the commission members have expressed on various occasions wanting to hear those comments. So we want to sort of put that into the regulations, even though for the most part we do already do that. I think a lot of local jurisdictions just don't get a lot of comments for most of their projects. And then we also did discuss public access and providing it and increasing it, and how we also need to be aware of whether or not the community wants that increase. It is one of our directives under the law, so we might be walking a finer line with that, but we are currently working on updating the draft language, so we will have more information soon as we continue to work on it. Lisa, do you have anything to say?
I think that pretty much sums it up well. Thank you, Kate.
Great. Thank you, Lisa and Kate. And I would also like to extend my appreciation to the commissioners who have committed time on this with the work group. It's been fantastic discussions, and I'm looking forward to conversation with the full commission on these in the coming months. Ms. Vanieri.
All right, back to me. So hi everybody. I have one update for you today, and then a little bit of an explanation about a new case that the commission has brought. So the first update I have is on Chester Haven, which was a Queen Anne's County Circuit Court case. That was the one that involved Chester Haven Beach Partnership's property, which is located along the Chester River and Piney Creek and designated as a resource conservation area. The county commissioners in July of 2024 approved Chester Haven's request to include the development in the Chester growth area. And then the piece of it that we were interested in participating about is that the county commissioners also placed a condition on the development, which would limit it to 90 lots without the need for growth allocation. So as I think I gave an update about this a couple months ago, but the Critical Area Commission intervened in that case as a plaintiff. And when I last brought this up, we were at the point where we had filed a motion to try to avoid a trial and have the court decide on the affidavits and the documents about the county commissioner's decision. And I'm happy to report that the court ruled in our favor on the motion. And specifically, there were two issues that the court addressed. One of them was related to critical area notice procedures, and the other one was related to comprehensive planning process. So on the first one, the court noted that the Critical Area Commission was entitled to receive notice of Chester Haven's rezoning request, and the county did not, the county commissioners and the county did not give us that notice. And because they failed to give us the notice of the reconsideration of the rezoning request, the decision, the county's decision violated the natural resources article. And then the second piece of this that the court described is that the county commissioners also were required to finalize their comprehensive plan, the 2022 comprehensive plan, within 150 days of the Planning Commission's recommendation. That's in statute, in the land use article. And the court found that the county did not do that. Instead, they took up this Chester Haven matter almost 2 years after the comprehensive planning process was complete. So in the end, the court found that the county commissioner's decision was illegal. It was in conflict with state law, critical area statute, land use article, and Queen Anne's County code. So there was a little bit of back and forth after the court issued that decision. So that extended the time frame a little bit for how long Chester Haven has to appeal the decision, and they have until the end of this month to decide whether or not they are going to appeal the Queen Anne County Circuit Court decision. So that's the first case. And then the second one I wanted to tell you about today was one that you received an email about at the end of December. This one's called Wicomico Valley Foundation, and it's in the Circuit Court for St. Mary's County. And there, the Critical Area Commission, again, is challenging a St. Mary's County Board of Appeals decision. And that decision granted a variance to construct an 1,100-foot long retaining wall within the critical area buffer right along the Wicomico River. And the Critical Area Commission did submit an opposition letter to the Board of Appeals, and we had assistance from the Maryland Department of the Environment on this one. And we're asking that the court reverse the board's decision on the grounds that variance does not meet the critical area variance standards. The next step in that case is to file, the county will file the record, then we will file our briefs, and then we'll have a hearing. So I will keep you updated on that as we move forward. That's all I have. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate your work as always. Any questions for Emily? Okay. That brings us to new business and just making sure that we are covered here. Okay. Just one item from me. It's not entirely new, but in December, I outlined the commission's legislative initiatives for the 2026 Maryland General Assembly session. Pleased to report we too have two bills at play for 2026. Bill number, let's see, where do I want to start? Senate Bill 178, which is cross-filed with House Bill 258. So that's SB 178, HB 258. This is a piece of legislation meant to do some very targeted updates to how we process applications, how we vote on regulations, how we consider the adjacency of growth allocation proposals. It's kind of a grab bag, but the common thread in this legislation is that it memorializes longstanding practice of the commission. So if this bill is adopted, you all won't see any changes. And that's how we want it in this case. We want to make sure that the processes are clear to applicants and to our own team, so that we can be efficient and responsive to applicants and local partners. We have a hearing in the House on SB 178 next Tuesday. If anyone is interested, feel free to tune in. We'll be reviewing the legislation with Triple E. And then the second bill is House Bill 247, HB 247. And this is the one that does some work in the variance section of our code. You hear that word mostly in these meetings from Emily. And that is because it is a quasi-judicial proceeding, even at the local level with the boards. And so it involves a lot of specific terminology, criteria, kind of the same work we do here, but on a much more micro scale. There are 64 different boards of zoning appeal in the critical area, and we are always working to improve the consistency of that decision making across the program, so that whether you live in St. Mary's County, Cecil County, Worcester, you're living and working by the same rules. So what this bill does in a nutshell is takes all of the case law from the last 15, 20 years around how to interpret our variance criteria, and it puts that case law into our standards explicitly, so that every board, every local jurisdiction can clearly have what the courts have said these words mean in front of them when they are making decisions. That's one piece of it. The other piece of the legislation specifically works on supporting the administrative hearing process in jurisdictions that have an administrative alternative. So instead of going to the full Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance request, you might go to a planning director or a designated administrative hearing officer. This bill, if that process exists in a local jurisdiction, would ensure that that is the process that is used first. So we don't go around that process. And then secondly, once that decision is made, if there is an appeal, that appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals is on the record and provides appropriate deference to the administrating hearing officer's findings of fact. That standard is already in play for our court system, and we feel it's appropriate to make that the standard for review at the board level as well. So we're excited about the possibility of moving these bills forward. Of course, you never know what's going to happen over 90 days, but we will keep you updated as things progress. There's no hearing on HB 247. Oh, I'm sorry, there is. It's the 11th of February. It's just a few weeks from now, which in session terms is an eternity. The 11th of February for House Bill 247, the 27th of January for Senate Bill 178. We will keep you posted as things progress. Otherwise, I would simply say on this relatively cold January day, look out for announcements from Charlotte and our education team for field visit opportunities over the course of this year. Really enjoyed getting out with you all last year in various places around the state to learn a little bit more about how the critical area is working, see challenges firsthand, and see some solutions. Charlotte and the team are working on a great program across the critical area this year, so hopefully you'll be able to make at least one of those more information to come. With that, I would ask if there are any comments from commissioners before we close. Okay, do we have anything from our staff?
I think we have everything covered.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you all, as always, for your work today. I'm always just looking at today's agenda. The critical area is stronger because of the work that you all have done just today, whether it's island restoration, bringing a local program up to speed, or working on a way to enhance resilience activity in the critical area. You've covered a lot of bases just over the last 75 minutes. I'm deeply appreciative of your work, and I'm looking forward to working with you over the course of the year. Stay warm, stay safe, and we'll see you in committee next month. We are adjourned.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.